The dark side of Jamaica, what Black Americans aren't told until they land there. Jamaica draws people in with beauty that feels like a promise. The food is rich and tender, oxtails stewed for hours, ackee and saltfish bursting with flavor. The beaches glow in postcard-perfect shades of turquoise. The music, the movement, the energy. It feels like life without limits. For many Black Americans, especially those who have lived their entire lives under the weight of American racism, Jamaica represents more than just a vacation. It feels like escape, a fantasy of belonging, a place to rest in peace, culture, and sunlight. This is a place sold with emotional force. Come home. The island offers not just scenery, but soul. It tempts visitors with the idea that here, finally, is a Black country where African Americans will be seen, welcomed, and understood. But what's really on the other side of that paradise? Because for many who arrive expecting healing, what they find instead is tension, a different kind of judgment, a coldness they never imagined, and in some cases, danger. The truth is what the travel posters don't tell you. And for Black Americans, especially foundational Black Americans, FBAs, descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States, that truth can feel like a gut punch. You're not one of us. The unwelcome surprise. Many African Americans arrive in Jamaica expecting connection. The idea of a shared history, shared ancestry, and shared oppression creates the illusion that being Black in America means instant kinship abroad. But what hits many FBAs the hardest is the unspoken wall that often appears upon arrival. You're not one of us. That's the message, subtle but present, in dismissive customer service, inflated prices, or the silent stare when a proud FBA talks about their struggle. In Jamaica, the identity of being an African American, especially one who speaks openly about reparations, civil rights, or Black pride, can be met not with admiration, but with skepticism, or even quiet contempt. In some circles, FBAs are mocked for not knowing their tribal roots or for allegedly being privileged in the U.S. In return, FBAs express frustration that their cultural contributions, hip-hop, civil rights leadership, global influence, are often overlooked or minimized. What was meant to be a reunion begins to feel like rejection. For many Black Americans, especially older women traveling alone or retirees looking to relocate, the experience can be quietly devastating. Deborah Washington had worked for 34 years in the Baltimore school system before retiring at 60. Widowed, independent, and finally free of raising children and answering to supervisors, she booked herself a 2-week stay at an upscale resort in Montego Bay. The trip was her gift to herself, a reset, a quiet exploration of her roots, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to feel alive again. But the second she stepped outside the resort, the fantasy fell apart. At a local beachside cafe, she sat down for a solo lunch. The waiter barely looked at her, tossed a menu on the table without a word, and rolled his eyes when she asked if the fish was fresh. When her food arrived, it was cold. When she politely asked for it to be reheated, he snapped, "That's how we eat it here. Maybe stay in the hotel if you want it your way." The table beside her laughed. Deborah swallowed her pride, paid the bill, and left a tip anyway. Later that evening, 2 much younger men approached her near a craft market. One told her she looked like a sweet and spicy cougar. The other asked if she was married. She ignored them, but they followed her back toward the resort gates, dropping hints about how American women have the good life and don't mind sharing it. The attention wasn't flattering, it was disturbing. Deborah didn't come to Jamaica to end up on an episode of 90 Day Fiancé. She wasn't about to get played into wiring money to a man half her age. And she had no intention of becoming the real-life how Stella got her groove back. She wasn't Stella. She was tired. And she didn't fly hundreds of miles to mother a 23-year-old stranger in hopes of finding a spark. She cut her trip short and went home 4 days early. Deborah's experience isn't rare. Across travel forums, YouTube vlogs, and private Facebook groups, African Americans share eerily similar stories, being overcharged, dismissed, flirted with aggressively, or treated as outsiders in a country they expected to feel spiritually at home in. And it's not just the older women being targeted or disrespected. Black men report coldness from shopkeepers, unnecessary police stops, or rude service in bars. Families have returned home saying they felt more embraced visiting Europe than in a country full of black people. The problem is not just misunderstanding, it's layered resentment. Many Jamaicans view African Americans as arrogant or unaware of Caribbean struggle, and in return, FBAs express frustration that their American identity is viewed with suspicion instead of solidarity. The line between visitor and intruder is never clearly drawn. And in Jamaica, many African Americans find themselves stuck in a confusing middle space, not white enough for default hospitality, not local enough for real acceptance. Jamaica is a country of contradictions. On one hand, it birthed global movements like Rastafarianism, which centers black pride and African identity. On the other, Jamaica has a long, painful relationship with colorism, bleaching, and anti-blackness rooted in its colonial history. Centuries of British rule left deep scars. Slavery ended in Jamaica in 1838, but the psychological legacy of that system remained. After emancipation, light-skinned Jamaicans were often granted better jobs, education, and access to power. Over time, being closer to whiteness became associated with success and superiority. This gave rise to a quiet but powerful caste system, one still felt today. Bleaching creams became widespread in the mid to late 20th century. Today, despite public health warnings, skin bleaching remains a common practice, especially in poorer communities where lighter skin is still seen as a ticket to modeling gigs, romantic desirability, or upward mobility. Music artists, dancehall performers, and influencers have even celebrated it. African Americans who proudly wear their blackness, natural hair, or African-inspired clothing often assume those choices will be celebrated. Instead, they're sometimes met with mockery, stares, or outright dismissal. Cultural confidence is not always received with solidarity. It can be read as showing off. Poverty, politics, and the tourist divide. Jamaica's tourist economy is dominated by foreign-owned resorts. Many of the most luxurious properties are owned by Canadian, Spanish, or American corporations. And while tourists enjoy poolside drinks and curated excursions, locals fight for basic access to healthcare, education, and safety. In this setting, African Americans, whether they realize it or not, are seen as part of that tourism machine. Even when they think they're blending in or bonding, many locals still view them as outsiders with deep pockets and shallow respect. Some take advantage of this. Taxi drivers charge triple. Guides lead travelers into fake tours. Shopkeepers double prices. And far too often, younger Jamaican men approach older American women not out of love, but survival, hoping for a visa, a wire transfer, or a wedding ring. When even famous people get disrespected, singer Sade, a British Nigerian soul icon, once traveled to Jamaica and later revealed in interviews how deeply miserable the trip had made her. Expecting warmth and cultural pride, she instead encountered coldness, rudeness, and colorist microaggressions. Her experience shocked her, and her story reflects a wider truth. If someone like Sade, a global black icon whose very music defines soulful elegance, can be treated with suspicion and disdain, what hope does an everyday African American like Deborah have? The truth is, Jamaica's hospitality industry has become more about tolerance than true warmth, especially when dealing with travelers who expect to be treated with dignity, not flattery, and who aren't seeking to play into transactional romance or the white savior dynamic. Why Black Americans need to know this. There is a growing trend among African Americans to seek freedom and cultural belonging abroad, especially in majority Black nations like Jamaica. But without fully understanding the layered social dynamics on the ground, that dream can backfire. Black Americans are not immune to colorism, classism, or post-colonial resentment, simply because they share a skin tone with locals. If anything, their confidence, financial freedom, and American identity can become a target. That's why this information matters, not to scare anyone away, but to empower Black Americans with the full truth before stepping into a space that may not see them as kin. Awareness doesn't ruin the experience, it protects it. It helps Black travelers avoid emotional harm, financial exploitation, and psychological confusion when the welcome isn't as warm as expected. Too many African Americans return from Jamaica in silence, embarrassed to admit they were treated like outsiders on an island they thought would feel like home. Some are scammed out of thousands. Others are pursued romantically by younger men with ulterior motives. Some are dismissed in restaurants, mocked for their accents, or judged for their American mannerisms. And all of this happens while brochures sell the image of a cultural reunion. Black meeting Black, soul meeting soul. But the truth is, diasporic unity cannot be assumed. It must be earned, built, and approached with caution, not fantasy. If African Americans continue traveling under the illusion that shared race equals shared respect, they risk becoming perpetual emotional victims of their own expectations. And on a deeper level, this matters because African Americans carry something sacred, the cultural blueprint of Black resistance in the West. The story of FBA survival, through chattel slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration, deserves global recognition, not dismissal. Any place that mocks that lineage, sees it as privileged, or weaponizes it as a reason to exploit, should not be allowed to hide behind a smile and a palm tree. For every retiree considering a move, every solo woman planning a trip, and every FBA traveler looking for ancestral peace, there needs to be awareness, caution, and clarity. Paradise isn't always personal, and without knowing the reality, Black Americans risk emotional trauma, financial loss, and cultural alienation in a place they expected to feel at home. This is not about fear, it's about preparation, because being aware doesn't just protect your wallet or your time, it protects your dignity. And for Black Americans, that has always been worth guarding with everything. The unfinished conversation about diaspora. Many African Americans who visit Jamaica leave with a heavy heart, not because the island wasn't beautiful, but because the imagined unity of the African diaspora felt painfully out of reach. The idea that shared skin tone would translate into mutual respect or solidarity is often proven false in subtle, cutting ways. This isn't just about travel. It's about identity, expectation, and the lingering wounds of colonial division. Until the broader Black world is willing to confront these divisions openly, African Americans must travel not with naivety, but with eyes wide open to the truth. Sometimes, the places that look like home will remind you that you're still a stranger. Movies like How Stella Got Her Groove Back helped romanticize the idea of the older Black woman escaping America's grind and finding passion and renewal on a Caribbean island. But that fantasy comes with a warning label that the movie didn't include. Taye Diggs's character in the film, based on a real-life Jamaican man, eventually turned on the real-life author, Terry McMillan. Their relationship ended in betrayal, divorce, and a public scandal. What was sold as healing turned into heartbreak. And that story is more common than Hollywood would ever admit. African American women deserve better than to be seen as walking visas or dollar signs. They should not have to navigate cultural hostility, colorist dynamics, or manipulative flirtation when they're simply trying to relax. Every place has its beauty and its burden, and Jamaica is no exception. There's no denying the natural wonder of the island. The beaches are breathtaking. The food, when prepared with care, is unforgettable. The music is powerful. The energy magnetic. Jamaica has produced cultural giants, freedom fighters, and voices that change the world. And for many travelers, Black and otherwise, Jamaica has delivered incredible memories, once-in-a-lifetime moments, and deep emotional healing. But that is not the whole story. And pretending that every experience is positive does a disservice to those who return home confused, hurt, or exploited. The truth is, Jamaica can be both paradise and pressure. It can offer joy and judgment in the same breath. And for Black Americans, especially foundational Black Americans, the experience is layered. One traveler might be embraced with warmth. Another might be met with coldness, scorn, or suspicion. That does not mean one is lying and the other telling the truth. It means both are true. People will say, "That wasn't my experience." And they're right. Others will insist, "This sounds like bitterness or exaggeration." But this essay isn't about generalizations. It's about patterns. And far too many Black Americans, especially older women and solo travelers, are quietly enduring experiences that contradict the fantasy. This isn't about canceling Jamaica or denying its magic. It's about confronting the shadow that exists behind the sunshine. Because only when the truth is spoken, fully and without fear, can the next traveler walk into that dream with both eyes open. Not every paradise is personal, and not every postcard tells the truth. Scope News stands by the facts. This report draws from a mixture of personal travel testimonies, public interviews, and historical records. Information on Jamaica's bleaching culture was sourced from local journalism and studies by Caribbean health researchers. Sade's public statements about her negative Jamaican experience were documented in music interviews in the early 2000s. Insights into crime rates, poverty, and political corruption in Jamaica are supported by reports from the Gleaner, Loop Jamaica, the Jamaican Ministry of Tourism, and the World Bank. Additional testimonies were gathered from travel communities, including Black women travel, African American solo traveler vlogs, and anonymous user accounts on Reddit and Facebook. This content is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. While based on real experiences and publicly documented cultural dynamics, individual outcomes and views may differ. This report does not generalize the entire population of Jamaica or its citizens, nor does it promote stereotypes. Instead, it presents a pattern of documented interactions that have been ignored or silenced in public discourse. Viewer discretion is advised. Scope News encourages travelers to conduct personal research and engage respectfully, but also to be aware of the realities that may not match idealized narratives. The experiences shared here are meant to illuminate, not indict, and to protect those who travel in good faith.